Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Brief. Today, we're very fortunate to have Hayden Kwast with us. Hayden, welcome.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be here.
Hayden is the Vice President of E-commerce and Digital Marketing at City Winery, and we're recording this on a Friday. So as I welcomed him, I was thinking how we might have to pop by our local City Winery to have a drink in a bit. Hayden, welcome. And why don't you get us started by telling us a bit about your background, starting from the early days leading up to now, and then we'll do a deep dive on what you're doing these days.
Sure. Yeah. So I would say I started in e-commerce way before I actually started in e-commerce. So I started right after undergrad. I joined the Peace Corps, and that was 2003 to 2005, and I was in El Salvador in a coffee growing region. So I didn't work directly in coffee at the time, but I was around it, and it fascinated me. Super interesting product. It's stunningly beautiful where it's grown. So anyways, after Peace Corps, I did consulting for a few years and then went to graduate school. And when I was in graduate school, I kind of wanted to bring together my whole background and create my own company. So I knew the coffee origin decently well. And then a lot of the work I've been doing as a consultant was supply chain work. So I created a coffee trading platform, and it was specifically for specialty coffee. And it was it was called Coffee Link, and it connected coffee producers to coffee roasters. Globally, it was most of the roasters were in the U.S. And most of the producers were in Latin America, where I had connections. But it was a global network, and I had that for a couple of years. And one of the largest coffee trading companies globally was interested in my platform to do that just for their network. So they acquired me. I would say it wasn't like a big acquisition, but it was like an acqui-hire. So they acquired me to do that same thing for them. And I did that for them for 8 years, which is great. I grew coffee trading or specialty coffee sales with micro roasters for them for 8 years, and used a few different developers along the way. And the last developers I was using at the time, really great agency that actually no longer exists. They were purchased a while ago, and it was called Something Digital. Really good people there, and they were working with City Winery, and they were actually said, "Hey, City Winery could use someone like you. Wine has a similar supply chain to coffee." Now that's actually a stretch, but I mean there are some similarities for sure. And actually, City Winery, most of what I do for City Winery and a big part of City Winery business is shows. So not even wine, but that was how the connection was made and how I got introduced to City Winery. I love the brand. I thought it was a really exciting company, big growth potential. We still do, and so I made the switch over to City Winery.
Very nice. Very nice. I'm going to pull apart a couple of things there and looking into some of the research about you and your background. You won a award for building moats. Tell us about that, and what was the moat? What was the context of the way that you were recognized?
Yeah, so that was an internal award at Olam. So the coffee trading company was called Olam. At the time, I think still the case, second largest coffee trading company globally, and then they also a global leader in several other products. And it was a building moats is one of their internal awards for creating a unique approach to sales to your business that is really hard for a competitor to emulate. So that was creating a trading platform or something at the time that no other specialty coffee traders, producers were doing at the time in e-commerce. So it was that was the moat.
Gotcha. So I have to ask you before we dive into City Winery, do you have a favorite coffee?
Um, I have a favorite coffee roaster, and then I have a favorite coffee region. So there's a lot of fantastic coffee roasters like all around the country. I personally like to buy coffee that's roasted near me. So I live in New York City, and so I sought out the best, what I think is the best coffee roaster in New York City. It's called Say Coffee, SEY Coffee. Fantastic job. They're based in Brooklyn. I mean, there's amazing coffees. So that's my favorite coffee. But then they source coffee from all over the world. Um, Personally, I mean, and there's lots of great coffees that I've loved coffees from many different regions of the world. It's a bit classic to say, but I think in terms of consistently great coffees, Colombia is the country. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I love and I like you, I enjoy coffee tremendously and actually enjoy trying different the way there's different made, different, regions. It's just and hearing and seeing the way that like I, remember being in Brazil and having a espresso, which was absolutely I mean, the restaurant actually had a place where you would go make it yourself because it was just like so ingrained in the culture, and I just loved that. But the way that it's played a role in so many cultures, and the way it's different than what we know or what's common in America, is really fascinating and lots of fun. And same thing with wine. So let's get into City Winery. So tell us, what's the brand? Because I think a lot of people don't really they think they know it, because it sounds familiar, but I bet that they don't know it as much as they think they do. So tell us, what is it, and kind of what's the story behind City Winery?
Well, uh, the City Winery brand is we have spectacular winery, urban wine country spaces, and several cities. At this point, all east of the Mississippi. We do have one rural location, so we do have to make the exception. They're not all urban wineries, but we do have one rural spot that's an amazing property in the Hudson Valley. But we have these beautiful spaces that are fully functioning wineries. So we come for a wine tasting, winery tours, um, but then we have uh, amazing acoustics again in these spaces. Like our founder had a music club in New York City prior that was famous. And as he was, I think, getting older, he was also f- creating a club for his age group. And he came up with City Winery, and so it's amazing acoustics, beautiful sound, and so we use our spaces for shows. We bring in some spectacular artists. I think it's some of the best, maybe the best programming for our venue size in the country, for sure. And then our spaces also like work really well for private events. And all of our wineries also have a restaurant to them as well. So we call it our four pillars to our business. One is the show business, the shows that we put on. One is private events, and then another is the restaurant, and then the fourth is wine.
Nice. That's a lot, and they're so different, right? Although definitely overlap and take advantage of the space. In restaurant businesses, one of the dynamics is every kitchen can almost always make much more than they can serve through table turns. Um, Tell us what are some of the dynamics of your business model, and what makes you so successful?
Well, I think so. Like, I'll start with the kitchen since you were talking about that. I mean, the what our kitchens have mastered extremely well, which is super difficult, is serving hundreds of people virtually all at the same time, right? So the you everybody knows at weddings, right? You're given a very short menu of like three options, and that's because the kitchen it wouldn't be able to. Most kitchens can't handle a large um, selection of different meals all being ordered at the same time. And we have a great menu, full, extensive menu, and we're preparing those dishes virtually all at the same time, which is why we can do private events very well, because you get that with private events, weddings, corporate events, and then for shows, people sit down, and we encourage everyone who come in to see our shows to arrive early. A lot of our shows, you can arrive up to 2 hours early. Sometimes it's only an hour early. But we encourage people to arrive early and order and have a more relaxed experience before their show. But inevitably, a lot of people show up as the lights are dimming, and that's when the kitchen's flooded with orders, and we execute and do it really well.
It's amazing. Yeah. I have a good friend I've worked with in the past, quite some. She has she's a strategist, and her whole thing is what she calls brain friendly branding. And she starts at the caveman brain and works outward and is really aware of all the senses in every, and so when she talks touch points, she really thinks through like every sensory touch point. Sounds like you guys do as well, because the sound is set up to be, fantastic for, musical events or entertainment, the food, the fact that you can actually serve a lot of people high quality and optional, like that to me is like calculus that I bet the executive chef struggle to balance what those are, because it's so the prep time and everything being cooked perfectly. That's hard in a regular restaurant, let alone doing all of them out the door. The expediter can't do them all at once. You'd have to have 45 expediters, right?
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about the way you think about that from a marketing perspective. Like, how are you thinking about extending those superpowers of venue plus quality food plus quality wine? And how's that show up in some of the other sensory kind of components?
Um, sure. Yeah. Well, it makes the job fun. That's for sure. I mean, so taking wine for example, somebody doing a wine tasting, we want to be, after somebody does a wine tasting, not just remarketing to them the wines that they may have tasted and they may want to re-up on if they, hopefully they bought a few bottles while they did the tasting, but remarket shows to them, remarket the restaurant to them. Um, Something that we're in New York City, we have several locations within walking distance to each other. It's only, well, within walking distance. I think that's the only city where, yeah, there's several locations walking distance. And so what we are doing there is we're still brainstorming this concept. We haven't actually launched it yet, but I think it's a really exciting one. It's like a passport where every time you dine at all three of those locations,
Mm,
you get you get something, maybe a ticket to a show, something. And so
right.
there's a lot of it allows for a lot of creativity when you have such a varied product offering, and it makes it fun and exciting.
Yeah, there's a program out there that Del Frisco's does that for regular for and it's by venue, and it's for tables or experiences that are over a certain amount, and typically where something high end wine is happening, and they have a silver medallion that's presented in and they're collectible by location. I think they're called Eagles or something. They have a whole thing around it. So
Mhm.
I like where that's going, and I totally agree that there's I mean, people are totally into collecting, and collecting experiences is what it's all about, right?
Yeah,
Um,
and similarly, we have a membership program that does well. I think it's really engaging, which is why it does well. Like the there's two tiers. The more premium tier, our VIP plus tier, it's called Vinophile VIP plus. Um, we throw those members a monthly wine tasting party. So it's just for those members. So you get to um, you know, chat with people who have similar interests to you. And it's a done really well. It's a fun party. It kind of blends together like good music in the background and the wine tasting experience, and we bring out some food as well. And then also in addition to that, members get to earn everything that they spend, everything that they purchase in our locations, food and wine, they're earning points that can be redeemed for show tickets.
Nice. That's really smart. Yeah. So tell us about what's how do you titrate the audience? What are your customer segments from a marketing perspective?
Um, so the main we the main segment is it's an internal term, but like what we call internally our cultural planner. And so this is somebody who it's not really defined by demographic. We try and stay away from that. It's more defined by a psychographic, and it's somebody who's wants to plan a really thoughtful an evening out, and it's and a thoughtful evening out that involves the music and the arts, right? And so it's somebody who cares. That person's going to care about their food. They um, more likely are interested in wine. If not, we can potentially like win them over to wine. And so that's our target segment. We found like that type of person who, if we, they're planning their night out a month early, maybe even earlier, if, a couple months, if it's like a bigger artist and they want to make sure they're locking in the right seats. That type of person is most likely to come back again and again, if we can really wow them that first time.
Yeah, I could. Just thinking about it, I could imagine the way to titrate it could even be music slash entertainment plus food plus wine, or food made better by wine and entertainment. And even, the wine explorer, because I think, as somebody that's had the pleasure of experiencing lots of different wines from all over the world, and, lots of really helpful people to open my mind and my palate to what's out there. It's a shame because a lot of restaurants and venues aren't great at helping you explore, because their options are pretty limited. They're, very commercially driven. But I'm curious, do you ever get into those? Because it sounds like you have some of that specialization in your targeting.
Mhm.
Um, do you look at it through that lens somewhat? That kind of splits?
Um, Uh, we do, yeah. I mean, inevitably when we're doing digital advertising, like the parameters you have to choose from to target with, kind of force you into thinking like that. But which and it works. So yes, we definitely do think in those lines as well.
Got it.
Mm.
Um, So as you think about, you're e-commerce and digital marketing. So e-commerce is inviting people, getting reservations, encouraging post-purchase re-engagement. What's kind of that spectrum look like, and what's how do you map the journey?
Yeah, sure. So they go together. So with the way we cut the pie, e-commerce is like once somebody arrives on the website, through to the buy flow, and then the post-purchase remarketing is I would say again back to digital marketing, but the what's happening on the website is so integral to the remarketing.
Yeah,
They go together, and then of course, like the top of funnel is digital marketing.
yeah, that makes sense. Tell me, what's your partner program look like? Do you do much co-marketing?
We do. Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of co-marketing. If the most is with the artists that are performing with us. So that's like an integral part of every performance we're putting on, the co-marketing. Um, and then sometimes private events too. Like depending on who the private event is for, um, it could be if it's somebody with a bigger following, then there's a co-marketing opportunities there too. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, how what methods and kind of techniques do you deploy or use in listening and gathering feedback and insights from your customers?
That's a really good question. I mean, we do. We do surveys. I would say on a more regular basis, on a weekly basis, we're looking at our reviews. And so, engaging with reviews across all platforms is essential, super important. And what's just as important is listening to what they're saying and passing that to our operators. It's not always our operators that they're talking about, but usually when people are leaving reviews, it's about service and good and bad, right? Luckily for us, more often good. But
That's
it's
good.
that's what that having a really clean process and flow to collect that information. One, like respond to it and address it and talk with the people leaving the reviews, but also pass that internally. So, um, one, when people are doing a great job, they get rewarded for it and like acknowledged for it. And then also if there is an issue, to address it quickly.
Yeah, that's smart. That's smart. So what, as an organization, what are the metrics you guys really are dialed in on and super focused on?
Um, I'm trying to think of like what might be some like metrics that are a little different. There's like the obvious ones, of course, but I mean because we have um, a membership, the retention rate is incredibly important for us. Um, Top line revenue, of course, is what we always look at, but then um, that compared with either ROI or cost per acquisition. So in the digital marketing space, it always comes down to the CPA or ROI, and in the world of ads, ROAS. So that is essential. You can't just like focus in on revenue and let your costs run wild. And so we have pretty clear CPA and ROI thresholds that we need to be hitting in order for it to make sense for us. So those are probably the two most important metrics we're looking at.
What upper funnel metrics do you care about?
Well, I mean, I would consider that. Well, the it's a good question. I mean, like the awareness component, like it's important. But I personally always tie it back to CPA or ROI. Even if it's a very top of funnel channel, we go to lengths to find or estimate the incremental revenue being driven from that channel. And so we have pretty extensive processes for coming up with what that multiplier might be. So whatever channel you're using, they're going to roughly estimate their influence in terms of revenue. It's almost always inaccurate or overstated, of course, based upon all channels do it. And so you need to do your own research to come up with like that, what we call our incrementality multiplier to find out. And you're never going to know exactly what the true
Sure.
influence is, but to get a better estimate on what that true influence is, and then calculate an ROI based off of that.
Yeah. No, that's smart. Um, as you think about the future of the business, what do you aspire to, what does next level success look like?
Um, Next level success is so right now, of course, everybody's talking about AI and very GEO AI focused. And I look at carefully several metrics, but in particular, I look at the SEMrush, AI readability score. And so we're not gonna. Uh, I'll just throw it out there. I don't think we'll ever catch them, but like Ticketmaster's AI readability score is just like way ahead of ours, right? So
Yeah.
long term, I would love to catch up to them. We are catching up, or we're better than several like well known competitors, and there's some other big names out there that we're very close to. So that's like what I'm looking at right now. But yeah, long term, it'd be great to be the forerunner in that field.
So I imagine certainly in New York City and major metros, there typically are similar type concepts, but you're really competing with restaurants, entertainment venues, party and group venues. So you've got to really diverse competitive set. And yet what you do is very distinct. So you have the advantage of that, but you also have headwinds of,
Mm-hmm.
habit and, what people know. People are just terrible typically about adding to their rotation collection, right? You find what you like and you tend to stick with it, and unless a friend invites you in. Um,
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why, I mean, the retention piece is is essential. Like, I think that's something that that's where a lot of our attention is right now, is winning over when it comes to both wine and shows. Like, once you we have a lot of, being a smaller venue, we have a lot of names that are of artists that are fantastic, top of their field, but in a not household names, right? So getting somebody in the door that first time to a name that they didn't previously know, and then wowing them,
mm,
that's that's what we need to be doing all the time. Like, that's our biggest challenge. But then I think, and we're good at that. I think then, like, the next step is um getting them to trust us as like a curator for them. So
mm,
that's because, and that's going back to this cultural planner mindset and way of marketing. Once, to get into somebody's rotation, you have to win their trust. Like, you
mhm,
have to become, their curator, whatever it might be. If somebody's an influencer, people are listening to them because, they trust them to curate clothing or whatever it might be. And so we need to be that curator and win that trust. And it's easier, I think, to look at that from a wine perspective, but it's just as, if not more important for us from like a show's perspective too.
yeah. I'm curious. I've worked a fair amount in the spirits space and with some really big brands that you would know. One of the things we tried really hard to do was uh, find ways for the authentically to connect with consumers outside the use occasion, or even venue, uh, just because that if it was culturally relevant and appropriate, it worked exceedingly well to you know lift up, and that recency factor plays a big you know value in driving probability of recency to consumption, um,
Mm,
even if it's a completely adjunct. Like we did a campaign around a political arena, which typically is marketers avoid because it's so mired with mess and emotion, and yet it was super productive. Do you Are there any ways for your brand to show up outside the use occasion of? I mean, what are some of those look like?
yeah, I think the recency is extremely important in terms of how we approach our programming, and that's not my area of expertise. We have a very good programming team that is thinking along these lines all
Yeah.
the time, and what is, I think, especially challenging for them and what they do well is um, we'll bring in we bring in new artists, and like the recency around new artists is obvious, and like it's easier in terms of just thinking about recency. But given the size of our venue, what we also like specialize in doing is artists who were popular in the 90s or the 80s, and but trying to finding a way to make them recent or like again is important. And there's always something. I'll use as an example, not even our own shows, because I don't want to um, dive into the details of how our programming does their work. But like when I saw a show recently somewhere else in New York City where it was John Krakauer speaking, and he's the author who did Into Thin Air back in 1997, and it was 1996 is when the tragedy happened on Everest, and it was the 30th anniversary of that this past May.
Mm,
And so that venue did a really good job at identifying the recency, how to create something that happened 30 years ago recent again,
yeah.
and bring him in, and it was a great talk. And that's something that, we're trying to do as well all the time.
Makes sense. I'm curious, I'm a big I enjoy my wife and I both enjoy going to live music and, particularly blues and jazz and things like that, and so we're actively paying attention to, like, bands in town and so far. Do you ever collaborate with them, in as part of your distribution and kind of reach, program?
For sure. Yeah. For every show. Yeah.
Oh,
And
nice.
I mean, when, bands in town in particular, they're a close partner of us and somebody we work with. But
Great.
um, bands in town is probably the biggest name in that, arena that we partner with, but there's several others too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love that. That makes a lot of sense. And that I'm in a smaller area, so we don't have as much richness as the city does. So it's a real great place to find stuff that's not widely publicized because smaller venues, smaller budgets, the whole deal. So that makes sense. Um, so you talked about what success looks like going forward. Do you have a sense of the LTV on a customer, and do you break it down to that?
Yes, we do. Yeah.
Okay,
And so growing LTV is, another long-term goal. Um, we've clearly people who become members or, not even just memberships is something that is a focus of ours, but, um, there's also we've identified a threshold for which, like, when people see a certain number of shows per year in a year, um, their lifetime value across all aspects of our business, is significantly higher. And so there's, something like a relatively like more recent, uh, metric that we've identified. And so we're really going after getting people to attend that certain number of shows a year, get them at over that hump, we like really win them over as, we can be your curator for great programming, um,
mhm,
and grow that LTV.
nice. I'm curious, I've worked a ton in the tourism space as well. Do you work with the local economic development boards and the tourism groups?
We do, yeah. That's not something that I do, in my role, but yes, we definitely do. And I know especially the neighborhood, well, in New York City and then all the bigger cities, the neighborhood, um, commerce,
Merchants associations?
associations are important.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and, we work with a couple of them and they're always looking for, like, how do you draw people into your area, right? And it's all about content and quality of content and consistency and repeatability and special pop-ups and, non-traditional stuff. So
Yeah.
that
So I mean, at the neighborhood level, right, when a neighborhood becomes hot or popular like that, the high tide lifts all boats, right? So it's
that's right.
important that the whole community works together on that.
Exactly, yeah, you succeed together or fail apart for sure. Um Really interesting. So, of the things that you've accomplished, sounds like you've got, like, well past the basics. You're into, pretty high science. There are lots of data. There's nowhere to hide on the data front, right? Which is good, right? And sounds like the organization embraces a data forward perspective. How culturally how culturally aligned do you feel the organization is around the brand?
Um, Extremely, I think. I mean, everybody who is there, certainly everybody who's been there for, stays more than a year, is devoted to the brand, right?
Yeah,
It's people join it because it's an exciting brand. Like there's a lot, whether you're interested in the private event component or the shows, or when it comes to shows, if you're interested in the concerts or the comedy, when it comes to concerts, if you're interested in the R&B versus the folk, like there's people who, we do all of that, and people, latch on to different things that they are particularly passionate about, and that's what makes City Winery resonate with them. But then we get excited about everything that we're doing, and the wine, of course, too, and the restaurants, and yeah.
I love it. Yeah, yeah, it's definitely there's so much richness in it. I could see where people have certain aspects that are their favorite, but it's the entirety of it that really adds up to being special. You're not just flogging people with, standard fare stuff. It's really, really specialized. I love that. Um, well, this has been super interesting. I'm curious as we now turn back to you, are there any people that have been meaningful mentors, advisors, or made a particularly strong impact in your trajectory in life and your career?
Certainly. Yeah. At where I am currently, our CEO and then also our head of marketing, have both been mentors. Like our CEO and how he works and how he approaches negotiations is I've learned a lot from him. And then our head of marketing, like her background and her approach with people is something that I've learned a lot from and I find very impressive. And then I think wherever I've worked in the past, I've stayed a decent amount of time in most positions that I've had, and that's because I like the people and I have a mentor I can look up to. So before, when I worked in coffee, the head of my department at that time, I had great respect for, learned a lot from in terms of how to run a business. Like he ran a business within a bigger corporation, and learned a lot from him. So that I think if somebody when you don't find a mentor at a job, you don't stay there very long.
Yeah.
I guess a little tidbit of it, my 2 cents of advice is find mentors, and like you'll be a lot happier in wherever you're working and more likely to stay, longer.
Right, right. I love that. So early on in the conversation, we established what your favorite coffee roastery is, as well as your favorite region. Now let's turn to wine. Do you have a favorite varietal or type of wine, um, or is that just like picking your favorite child kind of difficult?
Certainly, it is picking your favorite child kind of difficult. I and so much about wine for me, and I think for a lot of people who wine is an experience, not just it's the taste, but there's so much that goes into where you tasted that wine.
Mhm.
So I have a very special trip in my past with my wife that um, I, uh, I took to Italy and where we went to Barolo and tasted. So Barolo wines from Italy are just have a special place in my heart. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My wife and I did 3 weeks of, honeymoon in Italy, so, we share a dimension of that experience that is very special for sure. Yeah, it's hard to beat, but as you said, I mean, my first dessert wine was at a place that I'll never forget because it was so completely not what I would ever think to do, and yet the server and the staff were so smart to bring us to that place and invite us into an experience that was just incredibly rich and one that now I almost always think about it being a part of something when I have a similar kind of scenario, right? What's that meal look like? What's that venue look like? Where, time of year, all those things.
Yeah.
And I agree that wine has that place. And it's part of what makes it so hard when I go to the wine shop because it's like, oh my gosh, I want to put all these things together, but I also don't want to just have another Zinfandel, It's like, how
Well,
do
I'm
I
glad
make
you
it perfect?
mentioned, yeah, dessert wines because dessert wines are the most underrated, in my opinion, type of wine. Like um, they really can be fantastic and just pair so well with dessert. Frankly, I think a lot of people stay away from them because uh, it's way too sweet to drink with anything else other than dessert or right after your meal. And so if you're not in that part of the dinner, it's
Yeah.
gonna not necessarily be so appetizing, and so you don't think it's good. But um, if it's paired properly, dessert wines are amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I'm a very much a non-sweet I like desserts, sweet desserts, but I very much in terms of my palate for anything I drink typically, it's definitely not sweet. Like, Yeah, wine's definitely not in the no, although there are some that I've come to enjoy in the right circumstance, and certainly, as you said, dessert wines. But typically, I would have a Scotch or a bourbon or something like that at that portion of the night, if I was going to have anything, because I
Mhm.
most of the time don't. But and that's actually what the server's like. Okay, it's time for you to expand your horizons, Mr. Perkins. I'm gonna bring you something you have to try. If you don't like it, that's fine. And I was like, dude, that was amazing, and that's those little moments are difference makers, right? Um, and I'm, imagine that your organization has done that in ways, both in terms of the pre-planning, but in curating it, because if you're going to serve everybody at once, that you can't have a 20-minute conversation like you can sometimes at a really high-end restaurant, which is high touch and, an hour and a half stay versus,
Yeah.
whatever. So super interesting. Well, Hayden, this has been fantastic. Before we wrap up here, I have to ask you, on the personal front, is there a little known fact that you would care to share with our listeners about you?
My a little known fact, I would say is that I've also written a novel. Uh,
Nice.
Writing is something that I always didn't sell well, but I wrote a novel, and it's something I've always loved to do. And I think it's something actually going back to City Winery that brings most people together at City Winery is there's an artist and most people at City Winery. Most people are passionate about music because that's what we do. But if not music, there's an artist in everybody. And yeah, I'm an avid reader, and I wrote a book once.
And tell us the title of the book.
The title of the book it's called "Let Me Explain My Violence," and
Okay.
it's about it's nothing related to anything I do for work, but it's about a young mother who's um, had some frustrating time, and a bad thing happens, and she's explaining herself. Yeah.
Got it. Wow. That sounds super deep. And I can't, I mean, I've always wanted to write a book, but as an avid reader, I just realize I can't do it as well as the people I really, 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 really enjoy. So I've been resistant to taking that motion, just realizing that when I get into a book that's mediocre, which we all unfortunately stumble across, even if it's a well-written book, it's just the whatever doesn't work. So I've warded myself off from that, but I definitely appreciate people that take the time to do it. And that sounds like a really deep subject and super like I mean, to me, one of the things I look for in books is the humanity of it and the human condition and you know, definitely the way you described it, there's a lot of that in the world, unfortunately, and, exploring it and understanding it and seeing it from a different view is super interesting. So well done, even if not well read.
Well, thank you.
So maybe there'll be a day where it picks up. Sadly, many times artists have to die to be famous for what they've done. So let's not
Well,
wish that on you, of course.
no, no. Every once in a while, a friend learns that I wrote it, and they read it, and I get to talk about it. And that's
That's
enough for
nice.
now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All
Mm.
right, Hayden. Well, with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you very, very much for all you shared. In a year or so, we'll have to get you back to hear the latest. And if nothing else, we'll have to, next time I'm in the city, I'm going to have to make a point of getting out to City Winery and checking it out in person. And so that I can ask like customer questions.
You're
But
welcome,
I'll
and
warn you first.
let me know when you're around. Yeah.
Indeed.
Thanks a
Awesome.
lot, Chris. This was a lot of fun.
Indeed. All right, Hayden, thank you so much. And with that, we'll wrap up another episode of Beyond the Brief. As always, stay tuned because there's more. Uh, there's always more. After you write a brief, there's always more that comes up. And that's why we call it Beyond the Brief. All right, everyone, take care.